Cape Cod Broadcasting weaves the listening environments of 99.9 WQRC, Ocean 104.7, WFCC Classical 107.5, Cape Country 104, and CapeCon.com's website experience to reflect the lifestyles of the people who live, work, and play on Cape Cod. We hope that you enjoy this podcast.
I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. We're focused on politics in advance of the November 4th election. One of the locally contested races is the position of county commissioner. We have 3 county commissioners who serve as the executive branch of county government here on Cape Cod. One of those seats will be open because Bill Doherty is stepping down. There are 2 people running for the seat, Mark Forrest of Yarmouth, who is a Democrat, and Leo Cakounes of Harwich, who is a Republican. You're hearing from both of them today. Mark Forrest, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's start with you introducing yourself to voters.
Okay, well, I'm a longtime Cape Cod resident. I live in Yarmouth with my wife, Carol. I have 2 kids. We have 2 kids. They went through the Dennis Yarmouth school system. I am a graduate of the University of Massachusetts and have my graduate degree in public administration from Suffolk University. I'm also a former Vista volunteer. I worked in Boston during the time of desegregation. And then eventually my career moved into local government management. That's where my training is. That's what my master's degree is in. It's in public administration, local government, with an expertise in grants and grant writing and community and economic development. I came to the Cape. My first job was in the town of Harwich. I worked for the Board of Selectmen briefly there, and then moved on to the town of Provincetown and spent about 4.5 years in town hall working in the town manager's office there in Provincetown, working on the redevelopment of McMillan Wharf and a host of other critical local projects. I had the opportunity to work with the congressional delegation and got to know Congressman Studs very well. Much of my work in Provincetown was centered around funding for not only the waterfront, working with the fishing industry, water and wastewater infrastructure, and an interesting project which, quite frankly, was very telling and very helpful later on in life, and that was figuring out how to clean up a gasoline spill threatening to shut down many of our water supplies. In fact, half our water system was our water supply was cut off because of this groundwater problem. I also, in Provincetown, worked on a number of regional boards. The Cape Cod Regional Planning Agency, the Regional Transit Authority, the County Finance Board. It was my first opportunity to become very familiar with regional government. When I moved on to Congressman Studs' office, I worked as the district director for the Cape and Islands office, helping local communities deal with their issues and finding ways to get the federal government to help our communities and to help constituents sort of cut through the red tape of the government. And many of the issues that I worked on during those years involved cleaning up, again, dealing with groundwater contamination, pollution issues from the military base. Each of the surrounding towns, Bourne, Falmouth, Mashpee, Sandwich, all those communities were impacted in a variety of ways because of contamination, so they had to identify and develop new water supplies, and we had to find ways to clean up the supplies that were impacting their communities. Very complicated. And in the beginning, we had no idea what it would cost, but part of my job was to find a way to come up with the money. At the end of the day, is about $1 billion in federal funding committed to that project. Now, if you asked me in the very beginning where we're going to get the $1 billion, I would have said I have no idea. But we literally had to figure it out. So with Studs, I also worked on Stellwagen Bank, getting that designated as a marine sanctuary, the Mashpee Wildlife Refuge, and a number of other sort of Coast Guard fishing, marine-related projects. I also became very involved with the aquaculture industry, shellfish aquaculture. The federal and state governments were having trouble figuring out how to deal with this emerging industry, and so we helped the growers survive some of those issues. While doing this work, I was also very involved in founding the Lower Cape Community Development Corporation, which we now call the Community Development Partnership, which is very involved in economic development and in job creation and working to serve the needs of low to moderate income people in the Lower Cape. I'm very proud of that. And in my years with Studs, I also worked with the county on a number of initiatives. One that I'm very proud of is the Home Consortium, figuring out a very creative way to get the federal government to put money here in Barnstable County to deal with affordable housing. I also work with the Chamber very closely in helping. I served on the board for many years for what is a group called Coastal Community Capital. This is a group that's involved in providing funding for small business here on the Cape. So I enjoyed that immensely. Now, when Bill Delahunt came into office, the goal was to finish the cleanup work at the military base. And so we were able to sort of zero in on getting the final funding and getting more commitments to move that work along. And while with Mr. Delahunt, I also was very involved in creating the Upper Cape Water Supply Reserve, which is it's at the very, very northern part of the military base. It's an area has been cleaned up, and it's an area that's been set aside for future generations for our water supply. And we've also created a water supply cooperative, a new water district for the Upper Cape water supply districts. With Congressman Delahunt, also had the opportunity to work with the county on some very interesting initiatives. One I'm very proud of is I was co-chairman, with the RTA Administrator Tom Cahir. Back then, he was the Secretary or Assistant Secretary of Transportation. And together, Tom and I co-chaired the Public Transit Task Force. Our job was to create a public transportation vision for Cape Cod and get stakeholder involvement. And that led to the creation of what we call the Flex Bus, which is the expanded public transportation service that we now have on the Outer Cape. So that's just sort of a little bit of background in terms of my history. Today, these days, I'm teaching part-time American government and international relations at the community college. From time to time, I also teach public administration at Suffolk University. I'm chairman of the Cape Cod Conservation District, which keeps me involved in coastal restoration projects. I do consulting work for the Wampanoag tribe as well as for the city of Quincy. The city of Quincy has a very ambitious economic development initiative, revitalizing the downtown, and a lot of my work there is involved in doing what I've been doing over the years, and that's helping them get the funding and the resources to get that initiative off the ground.
So a wide range of policy work over many years. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal. I'm talking with Mark Forrest, who is running for county commissioner in the November 4th election. Mark, why do you want to be county commissioner? After all these years in policy and so forth, what brings you to take this leap?
Well, it's an open seat. I believe that I have new ideas. I can bring a certain type of leadership to the county. I think my background as a former town manager, a municipal manager with a lot of experience working on county issues, I think will be very helpful to this position. But also my experience in dealing with the problems that I think we're going to be wrestling with for the next several years, dealing with protecting our water supplies as well as our coastal water resources. I think my experience in dealing with those issues over the years will be very helpful as we try to tackle these challenges in the years ahead. And
besides water quality, let's zoom in on what are some of the bigger issues in county government that you would focus on if elected as county commissioner.
Well, on the clean water side, I think we need to work on an affordable plan. Folks here on the Cape are struggling. By and large, the year-round economy needs to be strengthened as well. But we need to have an affordable plan on clean water. We get to get the feds and the state involved and participating in this effort. They can't be sitting on the sidelines. I think I can be incredibly helpful in that regard. I think the economy is an area that we need to strengthen. I think we need to look at ways in which the county's own EDC, its own Economic Development Council, can do more to help create jobs. That's an area that I really want to focus in on. I think some of the county's resources, are underutilized there. I think we need to focus on county management. We need to zero in on a new administrator, a new assistant administrator. I mean, we need to really focus in and zero in on upgrading the management at the county level. Another issue, substance abuse. I think that's incredibly important. The county can play a crucial role in bringing federal and state dollars here to deal with treatment and education. Cost of living, we have a whole array of issues here we're wrestling with. High cost of housing, high electricity costs, rising flood insurance costs. I think the county needs to find creative ways to reduce those kinds of burdens on the people here on Cape Cod. We have a growing elderly population here. When we look at the issue of Alzheimer's and we look at dementia, I think what we need to do is look at how well prepared we are as a region, particularly with our health care providers, on serving this population. I would like to see us get very involved in working with veterans. We have a significant percentage of veterans here in the Cape. I was very involved in getting the veterans healthcare clinics up and running here in the region, and I think we need to do more to support our returning veterans and the veterans who are here, particularly in the area of housing. There are other parts of the country which have basically determined to end homelessness for veterans in the next couple of years. I think we should be looking at how we can play a role in that effort as well. The higher education is an incredibly important component of our long-term economic development future, so I want to see more partnerships with institutions of higher education. We have a primary doctor shortage here on the Cape. We need to be really focused on what more we can do as a region to address that issue. Throughout my career, I've been very focused on working waterfronts, preserving our blue-collar, working-class, working waterfronts. I think the shellfish industry, shellfish aquaculture, fishing are all vitally important industries that are often being forgotten, but we can't lose sight of them, and I'll continue to be a champion for that constituency. So those are just some of the areas that I think are real priorities that we need to sort of get really focused in on. And lastly, I think that on some issues that have really we've been wrestling with over the past few years, we haven't really done enough. I look at the NSTAR spraying issue as one. We haven't done nearly as much as we should on that. On Pilgrim, the people have spoken about the concern over that plant, but the county's been somewhat missing in action on that issue. So I think we need to be much more engaged in that issue. And I think those are two areas where I think our current role needs to be changed.
Now, are there specific things that separate you out from your opponent, Leo Cakounes, in your ideas for or even your philosophy behind this position and how you would do the job if you were elected?
Well, I think what you see often when there's an open seat is you have two candidates more or less competing and sort of articulating why they believe they would be the best one. I'm not running against an incumbent. I'm sort of trying to sort of lay out my own message, my own agenda. I'll leave it to the voters to identify the areas where we have big differences.
Now, there's been a lot of talk and study in recent years about the structure of county government. Where do you fall in that debate?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is there's no real consensus on what to do. I think that has become also a very divisive area between the commissioners and the assembly. I think in the absence of any consensus, ultimately the decisions on structural change need to go to the voters. But I think should I be elected, I would want to spend time to see where indeed we can create some consensus to change. But I think, quite frankly, the priority for me would be in focusing on the administrative side of the government, focusing on getting the county administrator's position squared away, getting the assistant's position squared away, really focused on working to make the current structure work fundamentally better. I think there's significant room for improvement. I think we need to do more in terms of promoting transparency and openness. We need to create a more orderly way of getting our message out or information out in terms of what the county's doing. It's nice to see the website, for example, improving a little bit. I think there's a long way to go there as well, but I mean, at least it's going in the right direction. So I think there are a whole host of just sort of administrative management things, initiatives that need to be pursued. And I think that's why my background as a former town manager working in municipal government can be very helpful.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. Mark, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Laura. It's been great.
I've been talking to Mark Forrest, who is running for county commissioner in the election on November 4th. I'm Laura Reckford, and this is Sunday Journal.
This podcast is a presentation of Cape Cod Broadcasting, which is solely responsible for its content. Thank you for listening. For more information, please visit us at capecodbroadcasting.com.